What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Totally Inspired with me, your girl Sibo Dube. And I'm so excited that today we are going to be talking to the younger generation, to younger people, and we are talking about the pros and cons of taking a gap year. But before we go ahead, please make sure that if you've not subscribed, that you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and please do give me a huge thumbs up for this video if you enjoy it, and do take the time to also go back and look at some of the videos that I've shared before. But let's get right ahead and get into today's topic. What are the pros and cons of taking a gap year? You might ask what a gap year is. Well, it is the time when a student or somebody that has just finished high school decides to spend a year of not being engaged in schooling activities. Or sometimes people take a gap year after varsity. So it's either you take a gap year before university or after university. This is a time when you can actually focus on non-academic focused programs or self-development or personal development programs whilst you try and wind down or tone down from a hectic college or high school program that you'd have just come out from. So please, let's not mistake a gap year for a time when you're spending a year of doing nothing. That is not a gap year. The idea of a gap year is not to while away time or spend time idle. It is actually a way of one getting to improve themselves in a skill or in a personal development exercise. So let's just get that clear and out of the way. A gap year should be viewed as a time when one gains skills and experiences which they would not ordinarily get during a normal year school program. It also gives one the opportunities to focus and reflect on what one wants to do next. It is a way that one is kept engaged away from an intense academic program and focusing more on self-development and experiences more than anything. It is also a good way of unwinding after an intense and hectic academic year, because a lot of times when people take a gap year, it is after they've just completed a major exam, for example, like the last year of high school or the last year of varsity. So sometimes it can be mentally taxing to get out of a year where you've been really working so hard, and a gap year is the best place or the best way to wind down and catch up with yourself and relax your mind. Trust me, it is not a time when you're idle and doing nothing. Believe you me, if you have the attitude that a gap year is a year of doing nothing, 2 months, 3 months down the line, you would be utterly bored. So that is why it is important that when you decide that you're getting into a gap year, you actually have something that will keep you busy. A gap year is also a time that you can use to find yourself as you reflect and think about what you want to do next. So it could be a matter of you deciding what degree program you want to take after high school or what profession you want to pursue after university. So it is a time of self-reflection and preparing for your next chapter in life. My advice to students who decide to take a gap year is that you should make sure that you bring your parents along, or whoever is your guardian or the person that is responsible for your financial expenses. Make them understand why you have decided to take a gap year. Maybe take them through the merits of why you should be taking a gap year, and each situation will be unique from student to student. So bring them along the journey so that they also understand where you are heading to. I think it's only decent that you do that. Some parents struggle with children taking a gap year because they think that it's a year where they waste time and they do nothing, and yet there are so many benefits that can come with a gap year. But before we get into the benefits, I also want you to be aware of some of the setbacks that will come with the gap year. Firstly, you could lose academic momentum. After coming out of high school, you are so excited of having achieved, if you've passed very well, that excitement around passing and the momentum you would have gained, having created a pattern of studying, you could actually lose it when you break that with a gap year where you're now focusing on things like experiences. Some people choose to go and travel, and some people choose to go and experience different cultures. So depending on what type of gap year you take, you could actually dampen that momentum that you would have gained in the previous academic year. If you're the type of person that's planning to take a gap year which is experience focused, so you going to a different place altogether and experiencing a different culture and the way people live, please just be aware that due to COVID-19, a lot of things are unpredictable. A lot of countries still remain closed and their borders still remain closed. So if you've chosen to go to another country, for example, you might find that you won't be able to go to the country if the borders are closed. And it could actually even mean that you spend an entire 2 months, 3 months, or whatever time not doing anything. So be aware of that. However, if it's a skills focused gap year, and you want to be within your country, it is indeed a good opportunity for you to be within your country, because the impact of lockdown and all that is probably more manageable on your side if you are within the same country and want to take your gap year within the same borders. Another disadvantage of taking a gap year is that you basically delay yourself by a year, meaning that you put your studies on hold by a year, and that also means you will finish a year later. You might lose the momentum which you've gained, moving along with your peers. And once your peers get started with varsity, for example, you must be prepared, to be a year behind. And of course, I always say to people, when it comes to studying, you are still able to rearrange your life, and it's not a race. But just be aware, if you're that kind of person that is attached to friends or classmates, you might lose that pace that you've been gaining with your peers. But of course, you will also meet new peers, if you think about it, when you do resume your studies. And that also increases the circle of your network of people. Another thing to consider when you take a gap year is that when you do decide to go back to school, academic institutions always adjust their fees from year to year. So if you would have gone to study the year you were meant to go and study, you'd find that your fees are probably going to be slightly higher than the previous year. So that's why I said it's important that you bring your sponsors along, bring your parents along, so that they also understand what the implications are. So maybe lastly, another disadvantage of taking a gap year is the fact that you might think it's exciting when you start, but depending on the kind of program that you choose, some people later on realize maybe they have involved themselves in something they were not really interested in doing, be it a skill development kind of gap year or an experience. So some people will travel to another country and they might just get homesick when they get there, or things just don't work out the way you thought they would. And remember, most gap years are taken by young people, still impressionable. It's a whole new world. It's a drastic turnaround from being under the wings of mommy and daddy. You are actually on your own. So that's another risk that you actually run into when you decide to take a gap year. But now let's look at the other side, the advantages of taking a gap year. Number one for me is always how your CV is going to stand out. After you take a gap year, especially the skills, even the cultural one, actually the cultural exchange, you come out as a better person with a better experience from your peers. When you graduated, you would have gone to develop a skill. You come out with a degree and that 1 year of experience. I'll give you an example. There are a lot of organic farms around South Africa. If you decided to look for an organic farm where you can work and volunteer, for example, you will learn more about agriculture and how organic farming works. And can you imagine coming out of varsity with a BCom or a Bachelor of Science and an experience, a hands-on experience in an organic farm? Just as an example, that makes you stand out. When you sit in front of a potential employer carrying your degree and that 1 year's experience, it really makes you a character or a personality or a contender that is way above and light years ahead of your peers. And hands-on experience is one of the things that a lot of people lack when they get into the job market. They just don't have experience. But you will walk in there having volunteered in a certain space where you've gained a skill, where you actually stand out from the rest of the crowd. So that for me would be advantage number one. Advantage number two, it makes you more mature. You come out as a student in a high school who's not that mature, but going through a certain experience. Say, for example, if you go through a cultural exchange program, you get to learn how other people live in other countries. Your worldview is wider and more open compared to your peers, and your maturity levels are bound to be accelerated compared to your peers. So when you come out of a gap year, you actually get into varsity, have a different experience, and have a worldview that is different from the rest. And some of the concepts that are actually even shared during your studies, you can actually visualize them, because some of them you would have experienced them, be it from a cultural perspective or from a skills perspective. You are actually coming in with experience. Advantage number three is that you grow your network, because you'll be meeting new people. other than your high school friends, now you meet people in the real world and you grow your network. If it's a skills focused gap year, you are actually starting to build your network within the industry of choice. And of course, that brings me to the point that when you choose the gap year that you are going to spend your time on, it should be something that you feel is actually geared or focused on what you anticipate you want to then go and study at varsity. So your network is already growing at that level when you are in the gap year. And another point, something that's very good about taking a gap year, is that you actually get a cool off period from the burnout of studying. You know, exam years are very difficult. People really go through a lot of mental stress. They even suffer burnout because you have to burn the candlelight. You're always working very hard, taking tests, and doing all sorts of things that keep you so occupied with your studies. And you spend an entire year without any relief. So it is a welcome relief from a mental health point of view, where you are able to actually rest your mind and do things that you love with less pressure. And then the other thing that I love about this is that a gap year will provide you with lessons that you'll never find in a classroom. If it's an experience kind of gap year, you are actually enriched by the experience you get from other cultural exchanges and getting a perspective of a different group of people from across the world if you go overseas, or from a different community if you choose to go into a community still within your country. So you get lessons that you would never experience in the classroom. Other than that, you also learn more about yourself, how resilient you are, how patient you are, and how agile you are, and how you are able to be flexible. You actually learn more about the kind of person that you are. If the gap year is taken after high school, then you are preparing yourself for agility in the tertiary education space. If you take the gap year after varsity, you prepare yourself for resilience and agility in the workplace. I hope these pointers are useful and that they will actually help you decide at this point whether you want to take a gap year when you're done with your studies. The important thing is for you to know the reason why you are taking the gap year, and when you do take that gap year, you use it fully and utilize it in a way that is responsible, and that way you're able to come out a better person after the gap year. Don't take a gap year with the view that you want to relax. Within no time at all, you'll find that you're idle and you're not using your time productively. I hope this will help you and that you will be able to make a good decision based on the pros and cons that I've shared with you. Thank you for watching as always, and please do remember to subscribe, comment, and like. Until next time, do keep inspiring.